Think about what the Democrats want to do. Step one, defund the police. Democrats here in Congress and Democrat mayors around the country demonizing, demoralizing our law enforcement officers and actually defunding police to the tune of over $1 billion last year in all our major cities. And what's the result of that? Crime is up in every major city. Step two, release violent offenders from our prisons. Last year, Chairman Nadler introduced a bill to pay states and localities to empty their prisons and jails. The bill called for the release of violent offenders from state prisons and local jails. Inmates were only deemed ineligible for release if they did, quote, not pose a risk of serious imminent injury to a reasonably identified person. In other words, it was okay to release inmates as long as they didn't pose an immediate risk to a specific individual. And now step three. Now the third part. Take away guns from law-abiding Americans so they can't defend themselves. This hearing today and the numerous bills introduced by our Democrat colleagues make clear that they want to disarm law-abiding American citizens by depriving them of their constitutional rights. And none of these bills would have actually prevented any recent mass shooting. The chairman of the full committee just said in California, I think he said 21 cases where they had extreme protection orders where they took someone's firearms from them. And he said that may have prevented crime. May have. We don't know. But what we do know is 21 citizens were denied their Second Amendment liberties by a proceeding where they couldn't even attend. Because that's what these red flag laws, these extreme protection orders do. The model legislation that the chairman's talking about pays states to set up a system where anyone can go to a court and say, I don't think so-and-so should have a firearm. There's a hearing where so-and-so, the one accused, the one who's going to lose their firearm, they don't even get to show up. It's ex parte hearing. They don't even get to show up. Then they take their firearm, and then they have to, they have to go to court to get their right back, even though there was no proceeding where they could attend in the first place. And the standard for all this is lower, a lower standard, reasonable standard. This is a dangerous path they want to go down. So I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, particularly the Republican witness. I am nervous about all the legislation being talked about on the other side. I hope we understand that the Second Amendment is right next to the First because it's pretty darn important. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, gentlelady, for yielding back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan.
Thank you,
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kramer, the government came to you, right? The Obama-Biden government came to you and said, in the event there's a pandemic, we need to be ready. You're one of the places we think can be ready. So they initially came to you. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
And they came to you because you're one of a handful of companies who could do this kind of work, right? I think you said in your opening testimony there are like 2 or 3 of you in the whole country. Is that right?
That's correct, Congressman Jordan. And we've been doing work in the public health threat area for now decades.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Kramer, the government wasn't just like, they just didn't pick you out of a hat and say, oh, you're one of the 3 companies and there's only 3. They came to you because you got a proven track record. It's my understanding, and Mr. Green served our country in the military. He said he's got all kinds of vaccines that you helped manufacture in his arm. You helped with the anthrax vaccine, the smallpox vaccine. I think you've worked on the Zika virus. You've worked with on the Narcan treatment that so many communities around our country have had to have with this opioid crisis. So you've worked on all those issues. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is accurate. Thank you.
And when government came to you this time, they asked you to do something unique. They asked you to ramp up, stand up this facility in a record amount of time because we were dealing with a COVID virus that, unfortunately, the Democrats on this committee don't want to figure out where it started. But we were dealing with a virus we never really seen, or the magnitude we never really seen before. So they asked you to do it in a record amount of time, and they asked you to deal with 2 vaccines at the same time. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
You never all the other work you'd only dealt with 1 at a time in your facility, one vaccine or one issue you were working on, not Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, not AstraVinegar as the chairwoman from the Financial Services Committee, but Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca. Is that right?
That's correct, Congressman Jordan.
And then you had a cross-contamination that you guys found because of the fact that you had 2 vaccines you were working on at the same time. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And since that was discovered, as the ranking member was just pointing out, you've not been able to use the over 100 million doses of the J&J vaccine that you currently have at your facility. Is that accurate?
It is, Congressman. Those doses are actively under review by the FDA as we meet today.
Have you, has your company or J&J raised any concerns? Is there anything that tells you those vaccines aren't good vaccines?
Those vaccines have passed all of our internal quality control measures, and I believe J&J would say the same on their part.
So J&J hasn't raised any concerns. You think they're fine vaccines, but they're not being used.
That is correct.
And instead, the Biden administration is thinking about giving over the intellectual property to foreign countries. And as we know, we got some heads of state around the world who are saying that's a crazy idea. But they're thinking about doing that instead of using the 120 million doses that everyone believes are just fine. That's the situation right now. Is that right?
I think that's an accurate description, yes.
So giving IP to China, the very country where the virus started. That's what the Biden administration is looking at doing. Instead of using 120 million doses that Johnson & Johnson and both you all think are just fine. Finally, I just have a few seconds left. The previous member basically accused you of committing a crime, saying you engaged in insider trading. It's my understanding from public reports and that the stock purchases that you exercised were determined long before there were any concerns about anything at your facility, and those were on schedule to happen regardless of any decisions that may or may not have been made. Is that accurate?
It is accurate, Congressman Jordan, and thanks for the opportunity to clarify. All of my stock sales were made pursuant to a plan that was